listening to the Business and Tech Podcast, your go-to source for all the tech needs in your business. Now, here's your host, tech guru, and CEO, Jack Garzella.
So in this episode, I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to interview a good friend of mine, Rob Heittman. Rob has worked with me on many projects over the last 10 years. He's pretty technical, so he's maybe more your 70-80% technical and 20-30% business, but he does run his own companies. He's been an executive at some successful companies, as well as the company he's running now, which is successful. So we'll interview Rob. He will be on and off the podcast over the next few months, helping us deep dive into some of the more technical issues, whether that be onshore or offshore management teams, cleaning up projects, building new applications and projects. But like I said, he also is very good with the business side, and I've had him in business meetings, and I'll be up there at the whiteboard kind of drawing out the solution, and Rob will be there prototyping one and turn around and say, is this what we're looking for, guys? So great resource to have. Loves fixing and building applications, very technical, but very communicative. Now, here's your teaser for this podcast. We're going to learn about elephants in Africa. So stay tuned, listen to the interview, and see about elephants in Africa. Okay, well, we're here on the Business and Tech Podcast, and I am very happy to introduce Rob Heittman, who will be with us on probably many podcasts. Rob and I have worked together for almost 10 years now. Feels like 30.
Right. In tech years, 30.
Tech years, time. You're 35.
Decade.
But Rob and I have done quite a bit of projects together, both business, technology, on-site at customers, remotely, obviously, working with each other. And Rob's got a background somewhat similar to mine. Mine's been a little bit more corporate than his. His has been a little bit more startup and varied companies versus my career. But yeah, Rob, why don't you give everybody, I'll put it in the show notes, obviously, but why don't you give everybody kind of a 2-minute background on you and let them know the kinds of things you've done, because they've been pretty.
We've come at, as I said, we've been in the same space, but we've come at it from slightly different angles, right? Because for me, I was a startup guy, and I was in my teens doing my own consulting business, and then in my 20s, when the internet exploded, we got the opportunity to strike out on our own, and me and a couple friends started up our own first internet startup. And of course, it was easy to get venture capital back then, and we got going in a field that was the Wild West at the time. And for us, it was not well funded. It was a bunch of young people just trying to make a go of something in a startup space. And we started off with really creating an ISP. And we were one of the first ISPs in the Washington, D.C. area, and eventually sold off our assets to Errol's Internet, which a lot of people in D.C. will remember having if they're of a certain age. And so we got Errol started, and then we started to go into the web because we thought the web was very exciting, and that was the next big hot thing, right? So we made websites for people, and we started making websites for big people like Washington Post and Institutional Investor and a bunch of pretty good marquee clients. And we realized the need they all shared was content management. And we were doing a lot of grunt work to make content management happen. So we're like, I know what we're going to do. We're going to be a software company. Now we're going to build software. We're going to make content management software. And we got really close to an IPO of that content management company before the bottom fell out of the tech industry in that first tech bubble, first internet bubble. And
2001.com boost or bust.
Yep. That bust happened with very bad timing to our IPO. So we did manage to find an acquirer and got out of it with our skin, but it was we went through the whole ride, all the way up to huge team, and really close to that line, and didn't quite make it over. But ever since, the thing I really found I like doing is I do like the technical side of it. I like being a coder in the trenches, as you know, when we've been on sites and we work together. That's the part that I like. So even though I have all this background as a leader of a company that's grown, and we still work with a lot of companies, a lot of startups, that I provide kind of uh, interim CTO kind of foo to. Um, where I like to be is I like to be writing code, and I like to be in the trenches and working with customers to make things faster and make things better and make their stuff work. So it's nice because like we always meet in the middle, right? Because you're coming at it from uh, you know that you know the tech stuff, but you found a home in the business side of it, and I know the business stuff, but I've found a home in the tech side of it. So it's a good synergy when we work together.
I've never even thought about not putting it in front of a client. You don't embarrass yourself. You know what to say. And the nice thing is when you're in the room, I'm in the room, or we're in the room together, we're solving the problem in that meeting. We don't need to bring in 10
Yeah.
people. We don't need to have a lot, as long as the business people can make decisions about their process, their data, their goals, their needs,
Hmm.
we can generally design the solution right there.
Right.
Another room when you've coded up a
Yeah.
sample of it while we've been talking.
Yeah.
Huge value to be able to do things like that quickly. So
Yeah.
and today
Yeah.
you're on
It's fun.
Solertium, right? So tell us about
Yeah.
Solertium. But yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a tech consultancy, and to a
And
certain
by the
extent,
way,
we're just
I will put the
yeah.
spelling of Solertium and the website in the show
Yeah.
notes
Right.
because
Well, I should explain the word. I should explain the word because
yeah, go ahead.
Solertium is it's a little used Latin word, but it basically means the collective wisdom of the group. It means together, smarter together, as it were.
Right.
So we named the company literally. We named our consultancy literally after what we think is the most important ideal in business and in tech consulting, which is that it's not about hero mode of one person or two people. It's about everybody bring their best skills to the table, the client's knowledge, our knowledge, consultants' knowledge, bring it all together and getting things done. So again, we're a small consultancy. We've been as as many as 10 or more people, and these days post pandemic we're down to like three or four. So we grow up and down as we need to, and we have our own subs and stuff that we're connected to in the industry, but we try and keep as many people around here to be able to just fulfill projects for the clients we have. And
Yeah, what I like
it's
about you
great.
guys is you're not a job shop trying to just pound people
No.
into a client, but if you need to scale up, whether you hire them or you have very good subs you can rely on that you've used before,
Yep.
I can count on you guys to get the job done, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A few days notice.
We talk now about like sort of like nerding out for a minute, and when we read a lot of React code, and there's an idea of like you have components, and then you have an idea of a higher order component, which is a component that modifies the behavior of another component and makes it better. And we look at ourselves like that for resourcing. Like you may have a team of 37 offshore people who are just blasting out code, but it's probably going to be a bit of a chaotic mess because that's just what happens when you have that kind of situation. And we can insert one or two resources into it to kind of make sense of the chaos and really transform what's going on. And that's all the projects we're doing right now are exactly that. It's not just us, it's us plus offshore teams, it's us plus in-house teams, it's us plus the management in the company. And we're there trying to make transformative change around some projects that maybe stalled or didn't do what they were supposed to do, and get them back on track. And
Yeah, so that's
great
basically
work. Yeah.
the tagline of my solutions experts company, right? Except that we hit it slightly less technical. Yes, we can do some of the technical stuff. We don't get into React like you do.
Mhm.
We're better on the database and analytics side, as you know. But from a management project perspective, right? That's where a lot
Mhm.
of things run off the rails too, where you have all these coders, whether they're in-house, offshore, or both, and they're building
Mhm.
stuff. But is it the right stuff? Did we actually solve the problem we tried to solve? Did we run off the rails somewhere?
Mhm.
Oh, that's not what I asked for, but that's what you said.
Mhm.
Run into that
Mhm.
all the time, right? So So you and I are going to do a full podcast, I think, on the offshore and offshore onshore model at some point, or maybe a series on that or a mastermind. I think we'll plan on that also. But why don't you just give us, if you can do it in 3 or 4 minutes, quickly, I know you just fixed an offshore kind of, I won't call it a mess, but a struggling project / application over there. Why don't you just give us a little bit of what you saw there?
Yeah, and multiple of those actually this summer. But um, it's a common theme right now that when when people are using consulting resources to develop software, and whether offshore, onshore, or wherever, but those resources are not, their career is not around the product. They're not taking ownership of the product to maintain for their whole uh, career for a long duration, for years and years. They're folks who come in, they're going to write some code, and then they're going to leave. There is a lot of discontinuity that happens in the code, which creates a lot of issues and a lot of pain. Um, the more coders, the more names you have writing code in that code base, especially when you have a small code base and a lot of coders contributing to it, and they're not coordinating with each other. You have the same functions, the same features in the software being implemented multiple ways, slightly differently, which is hugely confusing to end users who have to interact with this thing. And sometimes you have to click this button, and sometimes you have to click outside the panel and do something else, and it's not consistent. And we've seen this on projects that we've worked on together where we only had 2 or 3 coders, and they were career coders, but just one dev went a totally different direction with the way they thought things should be implemented, and another dev went this direction. And now, depending on which part of the product you're in, it's a little different. And multiply that times 100 or 1,000 when you get in-house team, offshore team, all of these things working together. We tend to get pulled into these projects now where that dynamic has run amok, and now the product has become a hodgepodge, unsustainable. So
Now, on these recent ones you've done, are you seeing more of the issues on the business logic, business process side where X doesn't mean X, on one side of the product, like when I got to Overstock,
yeah,
the sales meant 3 different things depending on whether you were talking to merchandising, marketing, or the executive team. And we had to go through a process to quickly, because we're building new systems around these metrics, get alignment on that very quickly. Are you or is it more on the technical side where they've decided to implement a business rule 2 different ways, or a screen 2 different ways? Same screen does 2 different things by 2 different programmers, but it's supposed to be the same. So
right.
I know you're seeing both, but what do you see more of?
Well, for me, I mean, this is selection bias at work here, though, right? Because for me, I see more of I do understand my business requirements, but I know that my technology doesn't do that. Um, and they call me because I'm the fix-it guy for that,
Right.
right? So again, it's that selection at work. Like if they needed the other thing, they'd be calling you and not me. So it's I see more of that, but it's not because there's not. I think the problem that you're describing, where the business requirements are incorrectly specified, or uh,
So 2 different ways, same thing.
yeah, like there's multiple competing visions, but people don't know they have multiple competing visions.
Exactly.
They think they're all on the same page, but when well, one of our old clients is that we both know is very fond of saying that what you don't really know what you don't know until you try to put it into a system. When you implement a system that attempts to encode those business rules, then you find out what you didn't really understand about the business rules. But yeah, for me, in the last, whatever, 6 months, year, especially since the pandemic, 2 years, I've been seeing a lot of no, we understand what we wanted this product to be, and take a look, it's not that. What, help me, you know? And that's more of what I've been seeing, but just because that's what we're known for fixing. So
Right. So yeah, and again, I think we'll have some nice masterminds, and we'll put some content out in the club on that,
Mhm.
and things like that to help people out. What so when you are in there trying to fix an existing system, or with me, you've created new systems primarily, or new
Mhm.
modules within existing systems, what processes do you recommend to use? And I know I think you and I totally agree, there's a set of processes for a new module or a new system
Mhm.
versus, oh, I'm in fix it mode, like I was at Overstock. Whereas with some of the more recent stuff I've done, we've been able to have a little bit more of a clean sheet on these modules. And it depends on your project, but what processes do you go through there? At least again,
It is,
at a mid-level, high level, yeah.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that is surprisingly missing to me when we get involved in a lot of projects is just um, some basic discipline around the flow of connecting a business requirement to code, turning that code into an orderly pull request, reviewing the reviewing and QAing that, and moving it into the product in an orderly fashion. I am frequently and always shocked by the fact that it doesn't. I mean, there are so many different things you can do and process in terms of going all the way to like a full kind of waterfall model, or just a very super ad hoc, iteration per week.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't really have a religion on that front. Like I think you right size that to the business and what you obviously can't do medical devices or aircraft software on a week by week ad hoc iteration model. But you can do that for a website that I don't know, just as some kind of recreational, it's a game or it's something, whatever who cares? There's low stakes, right? So
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, just do what people want. But that fundamental idea that there should be some traceable connectivity between this is the business requirement, sort of five whys.
Sure.
Why are we doing this? Is it to make money? Is it whatever? And then that business requirement connects to a piece of code, and that piece of code connects to a tested feature or whatever in the
Yeah,
software.
expected input and unexpected outcome, right?
Yeah, and especially this is one that I will lay at the door of offshoring a little bit, is that I I have seen that problem, a lot of the offshoring model, partly because you're dealing with people who may not have the English language skills or whatever to interact directly with those kinds of systems and in a useful way, might really know code very well, but aren't going to produce client-ready output in a project management kind of sense. And nobody fills in that role. So the code gets created and it lands in the product, but we don't know why, and we don't know which business requirements it was meant to solve, and we don't know if they're really solved until someone just goes in and looks. And we've seen that in all three of the last three projects we've gotten involved in, where we walked in and that was the case. And this is concerning. This
Yeah.
is very concerning.
You find yourself being hired in those cases by the technical side, the business side, or are they both just crying out, or the owner, if it's a small,
Well, yeah, right. So usually, I mean, one of the things that's so because we did come out of this world of, we had our VC friends and whatever, and we have our own,
Sure.
VC backers. It's usually a investor, somebody whose money is at risk and sees that a lot of money is disappearing and the product isn't going the direction they need it to go, and the business metrics aren't what they expect. So the phone is picked up, and it's we don't do a lot through uh, marketing. We get most of our work through referral, through people who
A nice
have worked
network.
with us before, and
Yeah, you
yeah,
stay busy enough with your network of people. Yeah.
yeah. We're tiny, and we want to stay tiny in that way. So it's definitely
Yeah. No, I think both
referral driven.
large organizations, and we enjoy the slightly smaller, but able to make a big impact on either a small or a large company for that matter. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so we're going to talk a bit more about all of this, drill some of this down over time. For our technology buddies in the
Mhm.
podcast here, because we will have some lead developers like David Fritz. You and I have worked with him for many
Mhm.
years.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
I think 10 years for him for sure for me. But and he
Oh
used
yeah.
to
I've
be,
known him much longer. Yeah.
yeah, you're much longer. But people
Hmm.
like him that are just outstanding. But no, you can't hire him, by the way. But if you're listening, but no. So the question is, what are your go-to technologies? Not so much from a
Yeah.
PC perspective, but I know a lot of the projects I've done with you have been in some level of Rails. We introduced
Yep.
React a couple years ago, but what are you seeing with your other clients?
Yeah. So these days, I mean, Rails is still important, but it's not as important these days. And most of the Rails projects we're maintaining are projects that have a lot of Rails code that was built last decade, right? Most things that we're getting involved in now mostly are heavily JavaScript stack, and we're big fans on the front end these days of Next.js and what they're doing. It's actually um, just this past week, Next.js 12 was released, which has kind of takes something that was great for building sort of toy and static and small sites, and now gives it the middleware and the things that can be used to produce some pretty substantial, real client-facing stuff. There's also, yeah, I mean, we're doing that. We're anything with JavaScript frameworks. There's Svelte, which is getting highly important right now. Vue is somewhat important, but all these frameworks are all JavaScript things. And then I'm sure you've heard this from from people in the family already, but Rust is hugely, hugely important. And anything that you're doing on server-side code right now that is happening in Java or is happening in Rails or is happening in, I mean, you got to look at whether or not Rust can help you here, because it's so fast and so easy to write, and we're having a lot of fun with that. So
So for the business people in the room, when you hear those terms, give us a
just
call.
glaze and
But Rust is kind of it's the next new thing. It's actually been out a
yeah.
while. When Rob references the family, my son's in grad school getting his PhD, and they use Rust a lot in their math
Mhm.
research and things like that. So, yep.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that I try to guard against when I was the CIO, CTO stints,
Hmm.
VP of technology development, whatever,
Hmm.
is my programmers bringing in technology that wasn't ready for prime time. Now, if you're a small company and you're just pulling up
Right.
an e-commerce website, or doing a new virtual reality website or whatever, you can pretty much use what you want,
Hmm.
as long as you don't lose your key developers. But when you're in a corporation, that stuff's got to be supportable. You got to be able to call somebody for support, or you have to have built a team that can support it yourselves if you're using a lot of open source and things like that. So those are some things that I'll be covering in other podcasts and some of that club,
Right.
some of the masterminds, of how the business side kind of monitors, and even how some of the
Hmm.
executives and large IT departments monitor what's going on, but don't cut the knees off from your developers because they like to do the latest and greatest. I can remember when I started, the mainframe was being phased out, although it's still around today. Uh,
Right.
None of us wanted to work on the mainframe, right? Several people quit when they told them they had to work on the mainframe projects when my very first real corporate job at Amoco, which is now part of BP. But yeah, so we'll be getting into that. So you have an interesting project that just blows me away sometimes, some of the projects you get through your network. So tell us about the African elephants, or what. I might have that totally wrong, but tell me.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. We, among many other things in our checkered past, we so for to set the stage for this, we got involved in a lot of conservation and biodiversity work because when that crash happened in the tech industry, a bunch of we were in DC, and there's a big nonprofit space there, and a number of our people from that tech company sought refuge in the nonprofit sector because it was stable, and they needed tech stuff too. So some of them landed at Conservation International, and we started doing some really exciting work for Conservation International. And this was big enterprise work. Like we built their grant management system that handled a fairly obscene amount of money on a regular basis and was dealing with converting those grants into every currency in the world, including hyperinflated Zimbabwe dollars and things like that. So from working with Conservation International, we went to work with IUCN, the World Conservation Union. And if you've ever heard of the Red List of Threatened Species, which is kind of the international database of how endangered everything is, right? Like, is it fine? Is it about to go extinct?
On top of
going
the
on?
list, right? That's a global.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the global list, and it's contributed to by scientists from everywhere. And we wrote, and they still operate the software that drives the database system that people put their species assessments and stuff into. And then we also built and maintained for, I don't know, 5 years or 10 years or something, the actual Red List website itself. And in conjunction with some of that, we also did work in the field with some of the specialist groups that work on certain threatened species.
Yeah.
One of those that turned out to be hugely demanding for us to work with was African elephants, which is a highly politicized species. And you'd think that counting elephants is a very easy thing to do, but counting elephants is not an easy thing to do. And it is extremely technically demanding, and also, I mean, from a mathematical perspective, and also there's a lot of political pressure, because if you're in a country that gets money based on needing to conserve your elephants, and those numbers are going up, maybe you're not going to get that money anymore. If you are in a country that is very pro certain kinds of hunting and certain kinds of farming and whatever, and you don't really want to know that the elephant numbers are going down because it's going to cause issues. So that was some work that involved a lot of complex requirements that are not the kind of requirements that you and I would usually run into in a boardroom. It was a lot more interesting than that. But we did get to work with Julian Blanc, who was like the guy who was the expert on counting elephants and has his name on all sorts of publications at the time. And then we did some work with other folks in that space. Ian Douglas Hamilton, who is another big name in that space. And we got to go around the world and work with these amazing people who are top of their field, and see some elephants and and count a few elephants. But yeah, I mean, so we are no longer counting elephants. The elephants are counted for now. There will be another pass of counting elephants that will happen in the future, and I don't know if we'll be part of that, but it was definitely some engaging work for a while.
The thing is, you would think these things are big. We just fly a helicopter or whatever, drones these days, we count them. But
Right.
about the politics, right? Just like any government
Sure.
or a scientific community, there's
Yeah, well, and the darn things won't stay put, you see, right? So, that's, I mean, if you could take one picture of your country or whatever at a moment in time and then just sit there and count, you could count the elephants. But if you're flying over with a helicopter, well, maybe they moved over and you're counting them over and over again. Now you think you've got 10,000 elephants and you had 1,000 because the way you flew your pattern is, so you have to be very careful and follow the right procedures. And then we express confidence levels, and we know, what your confidence interval is for different kinds of studies. And the most fascinating thing I learned during all that was that what they called I think they called it an individual total count. But if somebody tells you, "Hi, I'm Jack. I run this nature preserve. I have 164 elephants." There's actually a confidence interval on that, because we're not entirely sure. The couple might have been born, a couple might have died, somebody shot a few. do you really have 164, Jack? Do you really know? So unless you have like GPS collars on them and like for some additional level of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we were trying to assign confidence intervals to people saying I have 67 elephants. It's like, well, 50 to 70, give or take, right? So that was fun.
Cool. Let's do some quick hitters here. I try to do this
Okay.
since this is your first podcast. We'll do it now.
Yeah.
And the answers to these questions have been all over the map. It's been quite interesting.
Okay. All right.
So first, what's your favorite music group?
Oh, now see, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. I go back and forth. I mean, I don't know. Does it have to be a group or can it be an individual artist or?
Whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Well, I'm gonna have to say Taylor Swift these days
Yeah.
because I gotta say, I mean, Folklore and Evermore got me through the pandemic. So yeah, I'm gonna be a Swiftie. So I think that's my answer for now.
I have the variety of her music these days is quite wide, quite wide.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
all good, no problem there. We won't judge. Won't judge.
yeah. I'm just gonna go there. I'm just gonna go there.
No, I mean, I remember when I used to, just as a side note, when I used to do a lot of coding back 20 years ago, I just put music on, rock and roll, whatever, just to keep you motivated, keep you going, right? And stop the
Yeah.
distractions.
Yeah, well, for that, I listen to a lot of lo-fi hip hop, and that's like, but that's those nobody knows those, Hugway, nobody knows who that is, right? So you can't really say that in a.
Okay, now this is going to be, I think, even tougher for you because you're always giving me recommendations. But what's your favorite, TV series and or movie or streaming?
Like currently out or just ever.
I tell you what, I'll let you do a current, and I'll let you do one for the last 3-4 years.
All right. Well, gosh, I mean, currently I'm just blown away by Foundation. I'm super impressed by what they've been able to do, and that was a favorite from childhood, and they're still making it fresh and exciting, and the visuals are stunning, and I'm just wait for it to come out every Friday. So Foundation is definitely doing it for me right now.
So let's move on. Yeah.
But the one I'm going to say the one I keep watching the most, I keep going back to, and I'll be very excited for another season of it, is Westworld.
Oh, sure. Sure.
It's like it's got everything that you would like about Game of Thrones, but minus the things you wouldn't like about Game of Thrones. And
Watch it with the kids mostly. Yeah.
yeah, it's nerdy and technical, and it's gotten to be very much about the perils of AI, and that's I think a topical thing for our world we live in right now. So yeah, Westworld. Yeah.
That's good. I thought you might do Stranger Things or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that stuff. I do, but I mean, the one that like I'm just thinking about what do I put on? What do I put on and actually watch the most often? I've probably watched both seasons of Westworld a lot. Yeah, like a lot. Yeah. So all the seasons of Westworld, I'll say. Yeah,
so I kind of know this, but let's let the listeners know, subscribers here. What do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, I live in Florida. I have a pool in the back, and I live near a bunch of theme parks. So I don't have any shortage of things to do. But
And
yeah,
pizza oven.
yeah, we have a pizza oven. We have a nice grill, and we just our project now is we're putting up solar, so I don't have to feel bad about killing the planet with all this power I burn down while I do all these things. But yeah, yeah, I mean. It's sad because we're recording this just as the pool's getting a little too cold to swim in. So I guess it'll be more theme parks and less pool in the near future.
I've seen that big propane tank to heat it. You just don't want to pay the
That's oh no, I have the bill right here. I actually just got the tank filled, so I'm ready for the winter.
That's awesome. All right, this is a crazy one. What's your favorite car? And then what's your favorite color?
Wait, what's my favorite car? Oh, so
Because
this,
I gotta tell you guys,
yeah,
I've seen Rob in some. Rob's car selections are interesting to say the least.
yeah. Well, you're right. So I should explain. I mean, I've had a smart.
Sports cars.
Yeah. No, I've had a smart. Currently, we have the last last Volkswagen New Beetle, and then I was gonna say I have this Jeep Renegade right now, Trailhawk Renegade, and it is my favorite car I've driven. It's like got kind of all of the Jeep features that I would want from a Jeep, which I love Jeeps, but it's kind of tiny and it fits in parking spaces, and I don't have the Jeep problems that I would otherwise have. I'm really loving it, and right now I'm just like I'm not moving until they make that an electric car. Like I want to see that come up. So I do. I've been lusting after the Jeep 4xe. Now I mean that's exciting. But I'm sticking with my Renegade. So that's where I'm at.
I think you told me your smart car was basically a rolling roll bar cage. Is that what you?
Yeah, they're super safe. But the reason the reason I didn't feel okay with it here in Florida is just we lived basically in a construction zone for years. It's getting better now. Things are getting built up, but and you picked up nails in the tires all the time, and there is no spare in this moment. So that wasn't going to work for me, and so we gave it to a friend who really needed a car. He got it, but then I moved on to what I have then, the Cube, I guess, and whatever.
So. Had the Cube for a while. I did not
Yeah.
know the story about the spare tire though. That's great.
Yeah.
And then on that car, what color would you like?
Oh, I mean, this is Florida. There's only one color the cars can be. It's white.
White.
And I actually just like white cars anyway. All of our cars are black and white if we can do it. It's kind of our thing. So.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Rob. Really appreciate you having you on here. We'll definitely
let's do this again.
We'll dive into some of these topics a little deeper. Have you on with other guests and go from there. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I bet you learned a little bit about elephants in Africa that you never thought you'd know. Rob's a great resource. We're going to have him on many podcasts over the next year. He'll also be helping me with the YouTube content. We'll be drilling down various subjects, both technical, business, project-oriented things. It'll be a great resource for us to have as part of our community here on the Business and Tech Podcast. Thanks a lot, Rob, and we appreciate your time.